So I want to talk about a brilliant album that you may have never heard or you may have forgotten about. The album is called Demons and Wizards, and it's by the band Uriah Heep. If you're not familiar with Uriah, you check them out anywhere online, primarily on YouTube, and their material is fully accessible. And Demons and Wizards is a great place to start. If you are a fan of Uriah Heep, you probably already know the history behind the build-up to this album, which is the fourth album by the band, so I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about that here. We're just going to stick basically to the album, which, as I mentioned, is a masterpiece. And I want to talk about the different songs on the album and the arrangements, the production, and the general, what I consider a peak for the early signature sound of Uriah Heep. So first of all, let's talk about the band, which is made up on this album. I call this lineup of Uriah Heep the definitive lineup. Uriah Heep went through a lot of lineup changes, but for me this one is sort of the definitive sound, particularly for that early era. And it's David Byron on lead vocals, Mick Box on guitar, Ken Hensley on guitar, slide guitar, keyboards, vocals, and main songwriting duties. Lee Kerslake on drums, who later went on to play on the first couple Ozzy Osbourne albums, and Gary Thane on bass, although Mark Clark fills in on bass on a couple of tracks, including a real important one called The Wizard. So the album was produced by Gary Braun, and it is very interesting from a production point of view. One of the first things I want to point out about the production on the album is the way they recorded the acoustic guitars. The Wizard is a perfect example. It has a sound almost like someone stuffed a microphone down inside of the acoustic guitar, but at the same time it never loses its polished feeling, and that sets the tone for the entire album. It is a folksy but epic exploration of color and fantasy, and strangely enough, while it's not an outright concept album, it is a concept album, and the aspect that ties it all together is the theme of imagination. So the opening track, The Wizard, as I say, it's heavily acoustic and has a really wonderful bass line played by Mark Clark. And the production on it is such that the band always sounds raw, even when they are being mixed at a symphonic angle. So on one of their previous albums called Salisbury, they actually did a symphonic song with an orchestra, and they retain that overall feeling of epicness to their arrangements, even on a simple folky song like The Wizard. And that's one of the things that distinguishes it, along with the really thoughtful lyrics by Ken Hensley. So, Traveler in Time is a song that has a really heavy keyboard sound to it, or organ sound to it, and that's another part of the signature Uriah Heep sound, is Ken Hensley's organ work. It is not exactly distorted, heavy rock keyboard like you would get from John Lord, and it's not a crazy synthesizer sound like you might get from Rick Wakeman. Instead, it's kind of a haunted cross between like the Ghosts of the Indians and a church organ. So Easy Living, the third track, is one of the more popular tracks, and it's a really fast tempo rock song. And one of the interesting things about it is not only how the band drives ahead, but how David Byron is able to put his vocals over the top of the track almost effortlessly. Also, the lyrics are quite interesting. The song Poet's Justice is another thoughtful lyric, and it has the sound of the band really coming together as like a jam, but a contained jam. So there's something spontaneous about the song. No matter how many times you listen to it, it sounds like it's being made up on the spot. And again, Hensley just puts a really polished, thoughtful lyric over the top of it. Now, Circle of Hands is almost a protest song. It's a spiritually aware, environmentally aware, socially conscious song, and it's rather lengthy, and it totally spotlights the organ work in Hensley. It shows what he can do when he's using the organ to write a song in tandem with what I might call a progressive lyric. So side one is just a captivating exploration of everything from the fantasy narrative all the way down to like a social protest song. When you flip it over to side two, you get what's probably the heaviest song on the album, which is called Rainbow Demon. And it is just really brooding and haunting. It has a deep, penetrating bass line and heavy guitar. And, you know, the thing about Uriah Heep's guitar work is that Nick Box is well known for being a wah-wah player, but he also has this capacity to do kind of like a grunge sound. It's very, very heavy, and it matches the haunted keyboard quite well, and this is on full display on Rainbow Demon. I would say All My Life is probably the weakest track on the album, and it's kind of a pop song that's a hit and miss, and I'm going to kind of skip over that. And Paradise and The Spell are basically one track. They're two separate tracks on the album, but they roll into each other. And this is a showcase again for great acoustic guitar work, great orchestration, interesting lyric, and great keyboard work from Ken Hensley. So when you put side 1 and side 2 together, you have a masterpiece on one side and you have a masterpiece on the second side. And so for this reason, I think the album itself entirety is like a perfect gem. And I think that it's probably the best work that Uriah Heep did as an overall album, although they continued to do good work after this, and they certainly did good work before this. This is what I think. What do you think? If you have a thought on this or any other issue connected to classic or contemporary music, please comment in the section below, and remember to like and subscribe. Thanks a lot.